welcome back to another episode of Faith Talk with your host, Akriva, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company. Tonight, I am joined by a very lovely lady all the way from Oklahoma who's going to share her story with us tonight. Now, sometimes we plan our life and we believe that it's going to go, this way or that way, but then things happen, and she's going to share her story with us tonight, and you will be blessed by this story. Welcome all the way from Oklahoma, Sarah Shellenberger.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
And Sarah's a cowgirl, everybody, and this is the closest that I'm going to ever get to horses. I told Sarah that when we spoke. I have a fear. I'm afraid of horses, Sarah.
That's
and you have a love. I know, right? Yeah. And horses are here in the Bahamas. And if they come close to the cars, I'm like, I will run the red light. I had trauma when I was a little girl with a horse, and from that day to now, horses are not for me.
Well, I could change your mind if you ever came to Oklahoma.
I have to make a trip to break that fear.
Yes,
I have to.
It's a fear worth breaking.
I know. Yeah. But welcome to the Bahamas,
Thank
Sarah.
You.
How's it been so far?
It's been great.
Awesome. It's so good to have you here. You've traveled very far.
Yes.
From 6 a.m. until what? 1 yesterday?
3.
3 o'clock yesterday. Oh my God. But so far, so good.
Yes.
Welcome to the islands. It's beautiful.
It is.
People are beautiful. It's peaceful relaxation. So let's get right into it, Sarah. You're a teacher.
Correct.
Of
early childhood is my certification. So I teach pre-K up through 3rd grade. But I've always taught, most of my experience is kindergarten and 1st grade. I'm at a school that's set up a little bit differently in Oklahoma, so I have a variety of grade levels.
Yes. And just before we get into the hard stuff, let's talk about everything first.
Sure.
The horses.
Yeah.
You have a love for horses,
I
and
do.
You just finished a certification. Congratulations
Thank
to you,
you.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I, grew up just loving horses, and my grandpa had them, and, we'd go out and ride, and I'd ride every chance I could get, but just have always just found a lot of healing with horses, and especially, the past few years, they've just been like medicine to me in a lot of ways. So I decided I wanted to kind of make a shift and pursue a career that also involved horses. So I did. I just finished a certification to become an equine sports massage therapist. So so it's coming, a lot of people don't realize that horses a lot of times use chiropractors, and there are, specific dentists and people that work on their feet. And so sports massage is another way of just kind of stepping in and helping them. So
awesome. Yeah. And I just saw, I don't want to say it, but I'm so sorry. Your horse passed away.
Yes, yesterday when I landed in Chicago, I got word. So it's been kind of an emotional.
What was his? What was his?
He was one from the rescue. So there's a rescue that I'm on the board of directors with, and we've got 142 horses there. So a lot, and most of them come from cruelty cases, and so he just had a very, very rough background, and he was supposed to be coming home in 2 weeks with me, so
And he's gone. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Sarah, but you've still got more horses to go.
I
know.
There's a lot more to go.
So much more to rescue. Yeah. So let's get into it, Sarah. So we have something in common.
Yes.
We're BFC babes.
That's
right. We're IVF sisters. We're all of that.
Yes.
And we both have our miracles.
Yes.
But of course, your journey panned out different from mine.
Yes.
And I just want to get right into that story so that the audience can understand what we're talking about tonight. Life as a widow and a mother. You're going to talk to us tonight, Sarah. So start with your journey. Marrying Scott, the love of your life. It's okay.
Yeah.
I know. I have my towel here with me too, because I cried all day, Sarah. I just want to be very transparent with you, because I really listened to the story, and it just was not easy. I cried all day, so I can just imagine. But I know that every time you release this story, you feel so much lighter. And that's what's going to happen tonight, because so many people need you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so many people need you. So how did you and Scott met in college?
We did, yeah. We both attended college, small Christian school just outside of Oklahoma City. He played basketball. He was a few years older than me. We had a lot of friends in common, but we never dated. So.
Oh my God, this is my story.
Yeah.
My husband played basketball.
Okay.
We had friends in common,
Okay,
but we
yeah.
never dated. We never spoke.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't speak. We were around each other pretty often, but
Wow.
you know, it's not like he and I had a great friendship or anything like that. So, he was in a relationship for a lot of his college years. I was always drawn to him. He was just always, you know, the funniest guy in the room and just super kind and compassionate, very, very outdoorsy, and we had a lot of things in common, but just never dated. And then years and years and years went by, and he was in the military for several years and got injured, and was medically discharged, and he'd finished his master's and was pursuing his doctorate, and so he had traveled for school quite a bit, and he lived in South America for a while, and just had different life experiences. I was living in Nashville teaching kindergarten in Tennessee, and he just reached out to me on Facebook one day. So,
Facebook.
Yeah, we had been friends
Right.
on Facebook friends for years, but we hadn't talked in forever. And I just got a message one day, and I thought it was probably spam. Like, his account had been hacked.
Right.
I'm like, why would Scott Shellenberger be
Right.
reaching out to me? But he was genuinely reaching out. So
Wow.
we started talking, and then we talked for about 2 months. And then I was going to be back at my parents' house for Christmas, and he was in Texas at his family's house for Christmas. But we ended up deciding to meet in Tulsa. And so we met in Tulsa while I was in town and had just a great time together, and then started dating from there. And we were engaged just a few months later, and
Wow.
married, I think, 9 months after we started
So
dating.
Scott knew what he wanted.
Yeah, we both knew, by that point,
I
it's
love
like,
it.
you know what you're looking for,
Yes.
and
yes,
our families are so similar. We were raised very, similarly, and we just had so much in common that I think we just, that saying, when you know, was,
Yes,
was very
absolutely.
true in this situation.
Sounds like my story too.
Yeah.
So when you went to Tulsa,
Mhm.
something happened.
Yeah.
You got engaged.
Well,
Correct.
that was our first date. We
Okay.
did not get engaged. on
Right,
our
because
first
I don't want to
date.
run. Okay, I'm running the gun. Right, but I know it happened very quickly.
Yes.
Right.
yes,
So you
yeah.
talked, you met up, you started dating,
Yes.
and then the engagement happened.
yes.
Let's talk about that because we want to get into all the good stuff.
Okay. Yeah. He came out to see me a couple weeks after our first date. He came out to Tennessee. We still had a great time, and because talking is one thing, but then when you're in person and spending time
Yes.
together, it can really change things.
Yes.
So, but yeah, things went great, and we decided to, be officially in a relationship. And so I would fly to Oklahoma once a month. He would fly to Tennessee once a month. And so every other weekend we were able to see each other most weeks. And we did that until, we got engaged it was March 31st. And then I moved out to Oklahoma in June at the end of the school year. And then we got married September 1st.
Wow.
So 2018. Yeah.
Lovely. And all the parents, you liked his parents.
Oh,
they
yeah.
loved you, and your parents
Yeah.
loved Scott.
And I knew his parents were involved at the university that we went to, so I knew of his parents.
Okay.
And his younger brother was my age, and so I knew one of his younger brothers well. And yeah, they just felt like family just right off the bat. We just had so much in common. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when did you and Scott realize that IVF would be your roadmap?
Fairly early on, we wanted to have a family, a large family, badly. And so we decided that, we would start trying for children as soon as we got married. And, 6 months went by and nothing was happening. And he's a little more anxious than I am about things. And so he had started calling his doctor, like, why isn't this happening? What's
Right.
going on? And his doctor was like, you guys are both so healthy, just give it a little bit more time, maybe after a year.
Yes.
I had called and spoken with a new doctor since I had just moved from Tennessee, and he had agreed to run some tests for us. And so I went in a couple months later, had to wait a while, but went in and they did some blood work and found out that I had low AMH. So basically, I didn't have as many eggs as I should for someone my age. And that can be, they said variety of things. It could be anything from things in supplements or food or chemicals around the house. It can be something that's hereditary. There's no real direct reason why that happens.
Right.
So I just had fewer eggs, and that just means that it was going to take us longer to get pregnant. And as you know, when you get past 35, the quality of eggs starts to drop.
Correct.
And so we ended up doing medication with a doctor in Oklahoma City for several months, and still had no pregnancy.
Wow.
And, we had gone through so many tests, so much blood work, so many different procedures, and nothing was working. And so they ended up just telling us that IVF would be our best bet, which was shocking.
I know.
Nobody talks about it.
No.
And so I didn't know anybody that had even struggled. I knew people that had had miscarriages, but I didn't know anybody that had struggled to get pregnant.
Were you Googling like crazy too? I started Googling. When I found out, I was on Google. I was, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I just assumed there would be 20 things we would try before IVF. IVF just seemed like such a far out, extreme procedure.
It sure does.
And so when they told us that, okay, now we're just going to have to go to IVF, it was really, really hard to hear. And, there's just so much that runs through your mind when you hear that. All I knew about it was that it was expensive, and you had to give yourself shots. Those were the only things that I knew.
You sound like me.
But yeah, so it was a really hard pill to swallow for both of us, and we just didn't expect it to be complicated, and we just didn't expect it to be our story at all.
Yes. And how did you end up? I shared my story, how I ended up to Barbados, but how did you end up to Barbados when in the United States there's so many clinics?
So many, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, neither one of us our insurance did not cover a penny of it. And we both had great insurance, but Oklahoma is one of the worst states as far as fertility coverage. So when we found out that we had, not a penny covered, we knew we had to start looking elsewhere. So our doctor that we were seeing in the States told us probably about $25,000, and that we should expect to do more than one round. And we just, we had been married for a year at this point, and there was just no way. And so we just started looking into different options, and the school that I was teaching at, my principal and I were very close, and I was just talking to her one day about just, kind of the update, and that I was just really stressed about what we're going to do. And she said, oh, a girl that I went to high school with on Facebook just posted that she came back from Barbados and she's pregnant.
Information.
And I thought, there's no way we're leaving the country for medical stuff. There's no way. But I went home that evening and I looked it up and just saw all of these videos, all of these testimonies that were just beautiful. And it was the first time that I had felt hopeful.
Yes.
And so there was just something about seeing other couples that, they just looked like normal people, me and Scott. And they were from all over the world. Mm-hmm. But there were a lot that were from the United States, and that just kind of gave me a confidence, okay, if other people are choosing this, then we should really look into it. So Scott was outside working, And when he came in, I had shown him some of the videos, and I started crying, and we just felt like this is
it.
This is it. Let's schedule a consultation, see what happens, and we just felt really good about it right from the beginning.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, Sarah, were you successful on your first try, or you had to go frozen and travel back and forth?
Yes, we did go the frozen route. So, when you start off, you really don't know what to expect. So,
Correct.
We expected, I think, better results than we had. We expected to get a lot of eggs and, to be able to have multiple children out of this one round, and that was not the case. And of course, they don't know how your body will respond to the medication until you just get in there and do it. And so I ended up getting 6 eggs, our first retrieval, which was, for us, it was a little disappointing. And so, all in all, you go through all the steps of how many make it to this day and that day and all of this. And we did all the things, ICSI, genetic testing, all the things. We ended up with 1 normal embryo. And so we knew that we wanted multiple children, if at all possible. So we decided to freeze that embryo and go back for, as many rounds as it took for us to get to, our goal was to have 4 normal embryos, with the hope that would give us, hopefully, at least 2 kids.
Yes.
So froze our first embryo, and then ended up going back in February for our second round, and that's when everything changed.
That's when life changed for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because I wanted to I started, like I said, I was a mess all day. Please excuse me. But in February, your life changed.
Yeah.
Yes. And this was in 2020.
Yes.
2020. So you and your mom were taking a trip, and just for the audience, your mom did not live with you. You were so happy to spend this quality time with your mom.
Yes.
And Scott decided that he would stay home.
Yes.
And take care of the house and the farm.
Yes.
So talk to us about it.
And mostly it was because of work. He wasn't able. It was a very quick turnaround. We went in December for our first round, and so, I had to take a couple weeks off work, and he did too. He's a college professor, and it was hard to find coverage to help with all the animals and everything.
Yes.
But our family, pitched in, neighbors, everybody did what they could so that we could go. My parents came down from Kansas and stayed when we were in Barbados the first time, and took care of all the animals and everything. So, so he was not able to get off work again, and we weren't sure if he would be able to take that time off again. So we made the decision he left a vial of sperm there at the clinic. So because of that, my mom agreed to go back with me, and Scott hated that. He hated that he couldn't go. It's a big deal, and it's a really emotional process, and it's hard to be so far away and going through something that's so intimate. But my mom lived about 3.5 hours away from us, and so we were really excited to be able to take this trip together. So, yeah.
And so when you got there, Sarah, you're all prepped and you're ready to go. What happened? I think you were on your way back.
Yeah. So we had our second round. I had 9 eggs this second time. So wonderful. We were, excited about that. But of course, you don't know how many are going to make it through.
Yeah. Correct.
But yeah, so we, loved our time on the island. We did a tour of the clinic, and she got to meet a lot of the people that we had bonded with at the clinic when Scott and I were there. But yeah, ended up flying home. I guess it was the 17th of February, and landed. We were supposed to spend the night in Toronto, and then the next morning we were going to fly back to Oklahoma. Landed in Toronto, and our flight was delayed, so that kind of changed things by a few hours. So I was keeping Scott, informed, and we talked right before I boarded the plane, and just told him love you, and talk to you when text you when I land, call you when I land, when we make it to Toronto. Got to Toronto, and then you have to go through customs, and it just takes forever. So finally got through customs, and then my phone had connected to Wi-Fi, and my phone just started going crazy. And so I just had all of these text messages and, Facebook message, all of these. I'm just like, what is happening? And the first text that popped up was from one of his coworkers that just said, we're all gathered and praying. And so I thought, what is he talking about? So I tried calling Scott to see what was happening, couldn't get through to Scott. And then a voicemail came through from his mom that said that he had a heart attack and he was in the ICU, and they were able to get his heart started again. But he was on life support and was not responsive. So that,
I know.
nothing can prepare you for that. But I still thought, well, he's going to be fine. He's so healthy.
Yes.
And I mean, he's incredibly fit, strong, had just turned 41, so young. And I mean, he'd always been an athlete. And there's no history of heart issues, on either side of our family. So just thought, that's weird, but he's going to be okay. And so I lost it. I was just beside myself and had no idea how to help or do. It's just a very helpless feeling when you're so far away. And so my mom, also lost it and went to the ticket counter, and had just kind of explained, like what was happening. And they tried to help us change our flights. And so we were able to catch a red eye to Chicago several hours later, and then get from Chicago to Oklahoma City. So, I mean, that whole night we're just calling people, and I mean, I don't know if it was hundreds, but at least 100 people were gathered praying at the hospital. All of the students at the university had gathered at a chapel and, were praying. And, I think not being there, I didn't realize how dire the situation was. And that night I was able to connect with one of the nurses in the ICU, and she just she just said he's very, very sick. And it was the first time that it kind of sunk in that he might not be okay.
I could just imagine, Sarah, because I don't know, I've never experienced it, but I can just imagine everything that's going on in your mind at one time.
Yeah.
I just said I love you to my husband.
Yeah.
So life happened like very, very fast.
And you're on all these hormones.
Right. Right.
So it's like we were going through something that was incredibly stressful with IVF. And, we were still trying to see like how many we were going to get that would make it. And, so IVF is such a stressful, emotional process. So to have that going on, and then, to get this call, it's just like, your mind is just overloaded. So yeah, I got there the next day, on the, the 18th. No, the 18th is when he had his heart attack. The 19th, we got to to Oklahoma City. And my dad had driven down from Kansas, and, we had family from Texas that had driven up, and, just went up to the ICU, and a nurse took me back, and, he's just hooked up to life support. So and I still thought he's going to be fine, and they had also put him into a medically induced coma as well. Lowered his body temperature and just done a variety of things. And then they were going to try and wake him up later that day. So in my head, I'm thinking, yes, he's going to wake up. We might have a long road of recovery. There might be will he have to learn to walk again? Or I don't know. But I really didn't think he would die. I just really didn't think that. And then there were a few positives sprinkled in here and there, his kidneys are working great. And so I'm thinking, okay,
there's
right.
Hope.
Yeah, he's still in there. And so, I'm just talking to him. My parents are talking to him, and, just really worried, of course, and just wondering well, I knew life was gonna be different,
Yes.
but I just thought maybe for a little while, while we figure all this out and what caused this and everything. But it was just a couple hours later after I had arrived. They had been doing some different scans and tests on him, and a neurologist asked to speak to me and just said, we have some results. Who would you like with you? And I said, oh, we can have the whole family. And he just came out and basically said he's brain dead. And I just lost it. So we all did. And, it's not what, they had told me, like, once it's gone, it's not a function you get back. And yeah, that day it just became real. And, they had, I don't know if they tried to wake him up or really what had happened, but because he was brain dead, there's really nothing else that could be done. So, I very quickly went from thinking he's going to be fine to a couple hours later, he's never waking up. And then, you start having to sign off on all these forms and making decisions about donating organs, and it's just a blur. And that day the clinic called with an update on embryos, and it's just like,
so many things
happening and moving, and I just couldn't even function hardly. So so the next day we had to go up and say our final goodbyes, and we had to wait for a team from Houston to fly in. I chose to have his organs donated, and we had to wait for a team from Houston to fly up, and
that was it. Wow. And so now, Sarah, life after Scott, was there still hope? Would you still carry on with a family? What was your thoughts now after Scott is gone?
Yeah.
Sorry. It's okay, Sarah. It's okay. It's we're never prepared. We're never prepared for things like this. I had a close call with my dad in 2020. He was hooked up to about 12 machines in a medically induced coma. I visited him, and it appears as if one side of his body had left this earth, and one side was fighting to be here, and just prayers to see him today as a walking miracle. He literally went down to nothing. So in my mind, Sarah, I was just like you. Maybe he has to learn to walk all over again. And, you're so hopeful, but there's so many things going on all at once. And but the death part, I lost my brother. My father's son died while he was in a coma. So it was so many things. I didn't know how to process the death, and then dealing with my dad who's fighting for his life. And, there's so much emotions balled up at once. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to think.
Yeah.
But now you're in a place where Scott is gone and the babies are there.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts towards that now?
Well, I got the call a week after his funeral that we had one more embryo from our second round had made it. So at this point, I knew we had 2 chances, 2 babies, and with our beliefs, we see them as babies, not just cells and embryos, but as lives. Yes. And so, it was never a question in my mind, like, would I continue? Or, the thought of not continuing on with our journey never crossed my mind. And especially when he's gone, and we have children that we created.
Yes.
I couldn't wait to go back and get him.
No, Sarah.
So.
And you went over and you were successful with Hayes.
With Hayes, yes. 6 months after he died, almost to the day, I flew back to Barbados. And, at this point, just a few days after his funeral is when COVID really kicked in, and everything kind of shut down. So we had over 1,000 people at his funeral. And then just a few days later, you're not seeing anybody.
Yes.
So life changed. That was a huge shift as well. So it was just extreme isolation to go from, just the life we were living just a couple weeks earlier to, he's gone. So navigating going back for my transfer and all of that during COVID was really difficult. I went by myself and was in Barbados for about 2 weeks because you had to quarantine first,
Correct.
do all
I
the
heard that.
testing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then, did a frozen transfer. We had always wanted to transfer an order of our retrieval. And so because we did genetic testing, we knew that our first one was a boy, and
Yes.
Scott knew that. And then I had found out that our second one was a girl. And so wanted to transfer the boy first because that's who we had retrieved first. And I was successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have an amazing son, Hayes.
Yes.
And he's a mommy's boy or a daddy's boy. Who does he look like? He looks like Scott to me.
He looks a lot like Scott. When you look at baby pictures, though, there's a lot of his mama in there.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah. But there's a lot of expressions where it's all Scott. So,
Yes.
yeah, he's a good mix of both of us. But, I mean, he looks a lot like Scott.
Yes. And being pregnant, Sarah, and Scott is not there, how was it for you?
I mean, very emotional. I was extremely anxious the whole pregnancy. I think when you live through your worst nightmare, you know that horrible things can happen. And, you hear about horrible things happening, but you think it's not going to happen to me. But then when it does happen to you, it just changes things inside. And that is something I've struggled with since Scott's been gone. But I would be so nervous every single doctor's appointment, and I was just sure that they were going to tell me he's gone.
But he made it.
Oh
My God. And
Yeah.
so you still have a piece of Scott. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about your story, Sarah. There's still something to live on.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And then I saw where you went back for another shot for the sister,
Yes.
but that was not successful.
Correct. Yeah.
But we have Hayes. And I'm so grateful. So Sarah, as a young widow and with a son that will ask questions one day, Mommy, where's my dad? I gather that you've prepared yourself for those questions.
A little. I mean, it's going to be a hard conversation,
I know.
But it's our story, and I mean, I'm not hiding anything. It's we have pictures of Scott around, and it's Dad when he sees pictures, but it doesn't mean anything yet. But I mean, I don't really know how you prepare yourself for that. It's just something that'll happen, when the time is right. But yeah, I mean, Scott's parents talk to Hayes about Scott, and my parents do, and I do, and I mean, he'll grow up just with a different reality, So yeah.
I read that, Sarah, where you talked about, Daddy's laying in bed and Hayes going there and doing some breakfast or something. I scanned through it, and it really touched me because I was like, this is how we play it out. We expect to, every pregnancy visit, our husbands are there. They're rubbing our hands. In the delivery room, they're there. But that's not your reality.
Correct.
And so today, Sarah, you're living a life that no one wants to see. I mean, we know that we all have to go one day, but we say we'll grow old together, and, we watch our grandchildren grow up. So now, what is life for Sarah? You're encouraging so many people out there dealing with grief. And how did you navigate grief? How did you deal with that, Sarah?
I mean, I'm still dealing with it, and I'll deal with it the rest of my life. That's something I'm learning is, it's never something you get over. It's just something you learn to live with and live around. And so the first year I was I mean, it's just a blur. And then, being pregnant on top of that, it's a lot. And it was COVID. So there's just a lot of huge things happening. There's a lot of major life changes that you don't think of until you're in that position.
Yes.
But suddenly, 2/3 of our family's salary is gone, and I can't take care of our home by myself. I can't afford it by myself. So having to move, having to get a different job, having to, sell these things and find a new place. And there's so many massive life changes that had to happen those first few months. That were really, really difficult to navigate when you're like not able to eat, not able to get out of bed, things like that. But I had wonderful support from my family, church family, and I had counseling. I had grief counseling, trauma counseling,
Yes.
And did that about twice a week for a year. And I mean, it's just something that you just kind of learn to live around. So life now looks nothing like I ever would have thought that it would. And I know that it will continue to evolve. And a few years from now, I'll probably say it looks nothing like I ever thought it would. But, I'm just learning to rebuild again. And it wasn't like a breakup or something that changes one aspect of your life. Losing Scott changed every single aspect of my life. And just all the plans that we had, all the hopes that we had, and that I had, as far as like a big family. And I'm that little girl that has always wanted to be a wife and mom. And so I don't understand why it's so simple for so many people. And, the desires of my heart seem so simple, and to not have them, it's hard to understand. But I know that God knows the desires of my heart.
Yes, amen.
So
I believe that. He knows all things.
Yeah.
Jeremiah 29:11. He knows all things. Sarah.
Yeah.
What about widows now? I see that you are speaking on panels. You've opened yourself now. You're here on Faith Talk and you're talking about it. And you recently sat on a panel where you were able to see that so many others are dealing with what you've dealt with. How did that feel for you? And was that a release for you?
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I can usually share my story without losing it.
Yes.
And Scott and I had talked about, so when we started IVF, we had talked about that we wanted to be open about it because we had such a hard time finding other people that were open about it. And when we did, it was so encouraging and so helpful to us. So we made the decision to just be upfront with everybody about this is what's going on in our lives. And, we had to miss a lot of work, and it affects a lot of different areas. And I totally respect people that don't choose to share about that. It is a very personal thing. Yes. But we wanted to bless others with our story because so many other stories really blessed us along the way. So I've kind of taken that same philosophy with grief and with being a widow too, that if I can share and help encourage someone along the way, then I want to do that, because as wonderful as so many people were when he died, in my head, I just kept thinking, you don't get it. You don't get it. And you don't. It's not something that you understand until you've walked in those shoes. And you can imagine how horrible it would be. And people would say, oh, I can't imagine, or you're so strong, or I would just die. But you can't feel it until it's happened to you. Yeah. So the only people that I really got any true comfort or encouragement from were other widows. Yes. And to see widows that were several years down the road and to see that they had joy in their life again was so encouraging, and it gave me hope. And I know, that we have hope in God and always have, but to have tangible examples
Yes, of course.
of people
A
that had found
community.
joy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
was just priceless to me.
Yes.
So
Communities do work. I mean, it
Yes.
works for me,
Yes.
Sarah, because
Yes.
like I said,
yeah,
in the Bahamas, no one spoke about it. So
Yeah.
I felt very lonely. I had to find a community.
Right.
And it worked. It
Right.
worked for me to see the stories and see the success stories and see how the marriages were going too, because IVF is serious.
Yeah.
You know, it's affected a lot of marriages
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And so, of
Yeah.
course, I needed that
Yeah.
because there was no one else to talk to.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine the community of widows. And you
Yeah.
don't know until you're in the shoe, like you say.
Right.
And now you have that community of people.
Yes.
So any plans, Sarah, on writing books on it, on this experience, life after loss, or anything like that?
Yeah, I've had, my story has gained quite a bit of attention over the last few years, and I've been able to do a lot of interviews and different news stories and magazine articles and things like that. But I did decide to go ahead and write a book. So writing for me is very therapeutic. It's something that I've always enjoyed, and I've been told that it helps, people that read my stories, that it's been helpful, it's been inspiring and encouraging. So I am just about finished with it and going through the process of figuring out kind of whose hands to turn it over into right now. But yeah, so that's in the works, and would love to do more speaking and things like that at some point. So.
Of course. So Scott's life is still going on. It's a legacy, and it's still. I love it. I love it, Sarah. Everyone, isn't Sarah so beautiful? Sarah, you are beautiful. And how tall are you, Sarah? I know I just switched the whole thing. How tall are you?
I'm 5'10", so probably about 6 feet in my boots.
Right,
so, yeah.
because I'm a midget. I'm just like 5 feet 3. Amazing story, Sarah. Amazing story. And I'm just grateful that you accepted the invitation to come here, because so many people need Sarah. So many people need this story. There's so many people still waddling, and they can't find their way out. I mean, like you said, you're still there and you're getting through day by day. But some people, they don't know where to run. They've not heard your story, believe it or not. And this is what people need. This is therapy. This is, you sat on the bench and you spoke. You needed counseling. That's very important. These people need it too. And I know that this is going to go, I know, Sarah, it's going to be grand. It's going to be big. And I guess this is where your life is headed. You and Scott wanted to talk about IVF, but it's so much more for you to talk about, Yeah. But I have a little gift for you, Sarah, and I believe that you're gonna, when you write the book, you need to call us in the Bahamas. You have family in the Bahamas now, Sarah. So the team is all wearing this tonight, and I want to bless Sarah with this shirt to take back to Oklahoma. It says, "Get your faith up." It's my brand line. It's named after Skylar, my baby, Faith, and it's very encouraging when people wear these shirts. They have hope.
Thank you.
And they understand that, Hayes was made by faith. You and Scott believed that, we're going to go and get this baby, and that happened. So I want you to wear this shirt.
Thank you.
I'm going to encourage as you wear this shirt. And this is a book that I wrote. Mama, What is Faith? I'm yet to release the book. It's still in hiding. But this book is all about a story. Skylar's very inquisitive. She asks a lot of questions. And so I gathered that one day she would ask me, what is Faith? Right. And that's her name. Why did I give her this name? And, when God told me to write this book, he said that it's better to get a child when they're young to be grounded in their faith and to understand that whatever they put their minds to, it's possible. And so I wrote this book with that, encouraging kids that every mama will read this book to their kid and they would understand that, God has the power and he has the final say with everything.
Absolutely.
And I also placed a Bahamian dollar in here for Hayes.
He will love
you
that.
can tell Hayes that this is from his Auntie Kiki.
All right.
All the way in the Bahamas. I'm going to sign it after the show, but this is for you and
Thank
Hayes.
you. I love it.
You can put it on
It's
his
so
bookshelf.
special.
It's so colorful, right?
He loves books. It's his favorite thing.
Oh,
so,
my. Send us a picture of him reading
I will.
it.
Yeah, I will.
I love it. But Sarah, we're going to wrap up now, but before we close, I never end the show without allowing my guest to leave some words of encouragement or anything that you feel you want to share. Maybe there's a widow watching. Maybe there's someone who wants to go down the road that we went on. I just want you to share an encouraging word with our audience before we close out.
I guess I would just say that life takes many unexpected turns, but that God is faithful through it all. And that life can still be worth living after profound loss. That there's a lot of beauty in life. And you just have to hang on.
Yes. Amen. Well, that's our show for this evening. Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure having my guest here, Sarah.
Thank you.
And before you go to Sarah, just in case, because people are going to watch this and they're going to want to be socially connected to you, how can they connect with you via Instagram, social media, website?
Yeah, Instagram is where I'm the most active. My handle is the Western Mama, and it's MOMMA. So, and I do have a website on there, and so I will have information about my book and things like that. So I do have a Facebook page as well. So, but yeah, Instagram is the place to be. Where you can find me the most. Yeah.
Awesome. So if you want to connect with Sarah, we placed the names on the screen. You can follow her journey and see what the road is ahead for Sarah and Hayes and all of the horses. Let's see if I make it to Oklahoma to break that fair. Yes. Hopefully I get over there to ride a horse for the first time. But it is my prayer that you enjoyed this session for tonight, and may the peace of God be with you always. God bless you.
It is our prayer that you are blessed by this episode. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to receive notifications of new uploads. God bless.
Hey guys, I had a great time at the Kariba today. We connected online and flew all the way here to the Bahamas to do this interview. Really hope you guys tune in and support their show. They're doing great things here. Thank you so much for having me.
Do you have a life story to share that you know only God could have brought you out? One that can change someone's life for the better. Become a guest on Faith Talk by emailing faithtalklive7@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram at faith_talk_. We look forward to hearing from you.